Have you ever wondered what would happen if you somehow survived getting engulfed by a black hole? I certainly have, and like everyone else, I could never come up with a concrete answer. Black holes are kind of scary when you think about them. Their gravitational pull is so strong that light itself cannot even escape its grasp. They're so destructive and space warping, and the thing that makes it scary is that we truly know nothing about them. All we really have is our observations and theories. As far as observations go, we finally managed to get a publishable photo of a said black hole released earlier this year on April 10th, 2019. In the photo, you can see the photon capture zone of the event horizon, which is basically the visible range of gravitational manipulation towards the black hole. Before I go any further, let me introduce myself. My name is Carter Lux. It's ironic that my last name is Lux, because once I tell you what I know, you'll realize just how unlucky I really am. I'm 21 and work as a longshoreman. It's a job where you work at a harbor, where you import and export shipping freight. You would know what I'm talking about if you live near or in a city by the ocean. The area with all the cranes and containers, that's where I work. This is why a lot of people would consider me lucky, I guess. Being so young and getting a hard-to-obtain job like that. It's only possible because I come from a line of longshoremen, so I kinda just instantly got the job. It's just how the world works sometimes. I'm just happy I was on the positive side of it for a change, and I try to be as humble as I can about it. I was just a normal young adult like everyone else, just without the worry about finding a successful job. I just had to worry about keeping it. I might have inherited the job, but now it's up to me to maintain it, or they will have no problem firing me for someone more experienced to step in. Like most young adults, I try to relax a little from time to time, with doing activities like hiking, going to bars, or mainly smoking marijuana with some good friends of mine, Johnny, Derek, and James. They were friends of mine since elementary school, and we've basically been inseparable ever since we started hanging out at recess. Let me get back to the main story now that I've given you a little background. I'm sure you are all here for the interesting parts, not my life story. I still need to explain this for everything to make sense. First off, I do not want to come off as the one with the answers. As I just explained, I was a normal person just like everyone else. I never worked at NASA or SpaceX. I never really held much of an interest for sciences in that particular field anyways. To be even more honest, I never really cared about space or things that people think about in a scientific way in general. I would go for a more philosophical approach to things. If you couldn't already tell, I was a typical curious stoner whenever I wasn't on the job, just smoking away and wondering about the universe spiritually. Casually discussing theories with my friends while we were hotboxing my car was a usual thing we would do after our work shifts. One particular time, we got into a deep conversation about the universe. It started with Derek taking a bong rip, exhaling slowly. Yo, what if some scientist made a black hole by accident and destroyed everything? I turned over, stoned out of my mind, and said, I guess we would be destroyed then. Derek's what ifs were always the ones that were more like a bad scenario than an actual what if, leaving virtually no other option than what he said as the answer. What about you, Johnny? Derek looked over to the back seat. Johnny was passed out. I don't blame him. This shit was some of the most potent marijuana we've smoked in a while. The two main reasons why it was so potent were that due to my newly inherited job, I was able to get one of the most expensive eighths of bud at a brand new marijuana store that opened up nearby. And two, we took a 1-week tea break. A tea break is when you stop smoking weed for a certain amount of time, and it brings down your tolerance so you can get higher and smoke less. And let me tell you, it felt like it was our first time again. James? Said Derek, not wanting to bother with waking Johnny up. James looked over to Derek and I, looking seemingly more sober than the rest of us. I have a feeling he cheated a little on the tea break. Well, it depends what's on the other side, James said, packing a bong rip. Freaking James. Why did you have to open that freaking can of worms? I was intrigued the moment I heard James say those words. Now that's a response I wasn't expecting. James was always the one to say something eye-opening or mind-blowing. Yeah, James. What do you mean? It depends what's on the other side, Derek said with interest. We both looked at James as he pondered this question. He held up a finger for us to wait, as he was in the middle of smoking his bowl. After a couple coughs, he said, "Well, what do you guys think is on the other side of 1? Usually, I'd get ticked off and make him answer the question, but the way he said it and the high I was feeling made me want to play along. Well, I think it's probably a huge ball of light and energy made up of all the stuff that gets sucked into it." James nodded and looked over at Derek. I don't know, bro. Nothing, I guess? Because black holes just suck everything up and put it into some void inside. James's look got slightly more intense toward Derek and said, "Well, isn't space itself just a huge void?" Derek and I just sat there looking at him. James did have a good point. I started to pack myself another bowl, as I could feel my high starting to wear off, and this was a very interesting conversation I wanted to stay high for. After I smoked the bowl, I spoke. "What do you mean, James? You're saying inside of a black hole is a void?" James laughed. "Close. I think the other side of a black hole would be another dimension or realm, you know? Like a different reality or something." James really did know how to blow our minds. I don't know if it was the weed or not, but what James was saying sounded pretty plausible in the moment. "Damn, James, I didn't really think of it like that. It's like an inaccessible wormhole or something," I said, my mind wandering around in my thoughts. James looked impressed at my similar thinking. I think of it more as a one-way track to a different place. "That's a good way to look at it," I said, taking a breath of the hot box. It was so smoky it was almost hard to see each other at this point. James was looking out the window thoughtfully. "I wonder if we will ever have the power or know how to use black holes one day, or at least understand more about it so I can really know if I'm right or wrong." I looked at James. "Yeah, but I guess that's one of those questions we will probably never get an answer to." James stayed silent, but gave a slight nod, still looking thoughtful. That was 1 year ago. About 1 month after we had this conversation, James called Derek, Johnny, and I and told us to meet up at our usual smoke spot. This would have been normal if James didn't go missing after the black hole conversation we had. All 3 of us obviously agreed and went to the place to meet up. James must have been in some big trouble to up and leave like that, and then hit us back up a month later. Once we got to the spot, we saw James sitting there on the hood of his car waving us over. We sprinted over to James, who had a weird smirk on his face. A smirk. I wanted to slap that smug look off his face for making this situation and looking like it was a joke to him. Instead, I just yelled at him. "James, what the hell, man? Where the hell have you been? Everybody has been searching for you." Derek got into James's face, his head turning a slight shade of red while trembling, and said, "I should mess you up right now, man. You just disappear and come back with a smile on your face like nothing's wrong? You do realize we were the last ones to see you, right?" James's smirk faltered a little as he looked at Derek. And? Derek slapped James's head while Johnny pulled him back. "You have no idea how it is to be worried for your friend, while everyone else thinks you're the one involved with their very disappearance," Derek screamed, still being held back by Johnny. "All right, Derek, calm down and let him explain himself before we do anything rash," said Johnny, pushing him back and giving him a stern look. Derek backed off, but he was still pissed. Johnny might have been quiet, but when needed, he flies into action. He was also easily the strongest member of our group, so none of us wanted to fight him anyways. He looked like he was supposed to be a jock, but said, "Nah, I like weed more," instead. Luckily, he was also one of the nicest people you could meet, unless you get on his bad side. "Alright, fine. Let's hear it then, James. What was so important that you had to make us go through hell for a month?" James looked at us all and said, "I think I have the answer to that one question." This made us all silent for a second. I leaned forward and grabbed James's shirt and said, "Are you trying to tell me that you went missing all because of some stupid conversation we had last month?" My anger boiling to the tipping point. Johnny didn't try and stop me as James's response angered him as well. "You better tell me something real convincing right now before I punch you in the face and drag you back to your family who's currently devastated over you being missing right now." Not fazed at all, James looked at us and said, "It's easier if it tells you itself." Before I had the chance to think about what he said, everything around me turned blood red and all noise ceased. I saw Johnny and Derek both collectively freak out like me, but I couldn't hear a word they were saying. James looked like this had happened before, and was used to this abnormal view of the world. The color of Derek and Johnny came back, and I could finally hear them as well. James was looking straight at me. The more I looked, I realized he was looking past me, not at me. When I turned around, I didn't know what was real anymore. I looked up, and my mind started to slowly break to understand what I was trying to focus on. The being had this type of Vanta Black center and emitted an aura that made me feel numb. Vanta Black is a black so dark that it almost seems like a void, darker than shadows itself. The thing that was lurking behind me was easily 7 feet tall, and every time I tried to focus on what I assumed was its face, my mind would start to slip. It was the closest I've ever felt to losing my sanity. I don't know why this thing provoked so much fear into my soul. It just seemed like a shadow, but every particle in my body screamed that it shouldn't exist. Just looking in its general direction brought up a primal urge to survive, but somehow I knew better not to try and run from this being. If its mere presence changes the fabric of reality around us, I don't want to know what it would do if I tried anything. What has James gotten us into now?